I guess he chickened out.
Hey Darth, how you doing?
Hi, Hank. How are you?
Fine, fine. We spoke a couple of weeks ago. I asked you a question. You started to answer, and then you had to leave. I was wondering if I can ask again today.
Sure, go ahead.
You were talking to someone about determining things are real versus imaginary, and I'd asked you, how can I determine that your beliefs about God are real and not figments of your imagination?
How can you determine it? Well,
Yeah.
you have to repent of your irrational God denialism. Your unbelief is resistant non-belief. It is not non-resistant unbelief. Okay? And the only way that I can get you to come to a clear realization that you are guilty of resistant non-belief is to show you that your state of unbelief is absurd on your own terms. Okay?
Go ahead.
So, do you believe that your belief state of unbelief is resistant non-belief or non-resistant unbelief?
Oh, I hope you're right. I buried my mother last week. I really hope you're right and she's in heaven with my father and my
That's not a,
brother.
that's not an answer to my question. Are you do you do you believe in God as supreme being and creator of all things that are not himself?
No, I don't believe that, but I hope it's true.
Okay, now, um, so is your unbelief resistant or non-resistant?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, do you not believe because you simply do not want there to be a God?
No, no, I want there to be a God. I hope there is one.
Okay, so
I
you're
hope I'm
claiming
wrong.
then, so then you're claiming that your unbelief is non-resistant. In other words, you don't have an
Okay.
inner motivation. Now, to show you that that is false is to show you that your state of unbelief is incoherent on its own terms. Okay? Now, what is your reason, your non-arbitrary basis for the not God world?
I just believe they're all made up stories, the stories of gods.
Okay, well, uh, that's a non sequitur that God doesn't exist because people came to the conclusion that God exists through faulty reasoning. That's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow.
Oh yeah, I'm not claiming that God doesn't exist. I'm saying I don't believe it and I hope I'm
No,
wrong.
no, 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 no. That's a distinction without a difference. You cannot be neutral toward God as the ground of all being. You will either affirm it or you will not affirm it. The non affirmation will either be an explicit or an implicit denial. Okay? So, for example, in the God world, all facts that are not God universally derive and depend upon God. In a not God world, all facts would exist with independence from God. In other words, they would be invoked as is without the necessity of referencing God. So I'll ask you a very simple question. When you invoke facts, do you reference the necessity of God when you invoke facts?
Darth, I've done these questions with you a few times.
It's a
You know, but
legitimate
I'll
question.
just give me 10 seconds. You'll ask me a lot of questions that I
Answer the
don't know the
question.
answer
Okay.
to.
No, you know the answer to the question. Do you positively reference the necessity of God when invoking facts, either explicitly or implicitly?
How would I do that?
Okay, listen very carefully. You see, this is what they do, folks. They resort to being deceptive and evasive when you ask a precise question. Now, do you ever invoke facts?
Yes, I'm speaking to you.
Right. When you do invoke facts, do you positively reference the necessity of God for those facts?
Do you mean, do I believe God exists and that's why we're having this
Do
conversation?
you reference the necessity of God when invoking facts? Do you do
Uh,
that?
No.
Okay, so that is an implicit, indirect denial of God. You are invoking facts as is without referencing the necessity of God, correct?
Yes, and I'm not
Good.
referencing the
Now, no,
non-existence of God either.
you're quite mistaken. Okay, what you are invoking is a state of affairs that logically entails that God cannot coexist. You are invoking the actuality and a non-necessary relationship with God. So, in a God world, all facts have a relationship with God. In a not God world, facts simply exist without a relationship with God.
Yes,
So
I
you are
understand that that's what you
so
believe. My
when you
question was, how can I determine that that's
listen
true and not a
to me.
figment of your imagination?
I'm trying to, you see, again, you're evading what I'm immediately presenting to you. Will either invoke facts with reference to the necessity of God or without. A fact that is with reference to God can only exist in a God world. A fact that is invoked without referencing the necessity of God can only exist within the not God world. Do you understand what I have just explained to you?
Yes.
Okay, so the kind of fact that you are invoking logically connects you and entails the not God world. So what you are saying is, because you're not explicitly denying God, therefore that's the end of the story. Well, no, it's not. Because you can indirectly deny God even though you don't explicitly deny God. You can deny God by invoking a state of affairs that entails that God cannot logically coexist. Now, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Can God logically coexist with a fact that doesn't necessitate God as its origin?
You're saying that if facts need God, therefore God needs to
Okay, all
exist.
right. In a God world, God logically coexists with all facts that necessitate deriving from him.
Yes,
Can
okay. If
God,
God
so
exists, then that's true.
let me, no, listen to me. Can God logically coexist in a world where one or more facts do not necessitate him?
If facts can exist without God, then yes, I guess God doesn't exist.
Okay, you're not answering the question. Can
Okay, try
God
again.
logically coexist if there is indeed a fact that doesn't necessitate him?
So if there is a fact that exists without God requiring God, then yeah, then God wouldn't exist.
Right. So you are invoking that there are one or more facts that do exist that don't necessitate God. That's your position, right?
I don't believe God exists is my position, but I hope I'm
Okay.
wrong.
Okay. That you know what you just did? You dishonestly and deceitfully evaded the question to
Okay,
give me your
repeat the question,
standard.
please.
Okay. Your position is that there are one or more facts that actually exist without the necessity of deriving or referencing God. You
Yes,
believe
that's
that,
what I
right?
believe. Yes, that's what I believe.
Good. That belief logically commits you to the not God world. You can't escape it.
But that's not what I
What you
believe.
want to do is you want to deny God, but you want to dress it up like a man in drag that your belief is just simply a mental state that doesn't require a defense. The bottom line is what you do believe, that is the independence of facts from God, or that facts can and are invoked without the necessity of referencing God. What you don't want to realize, or what you won't admit, is that logically entails and commits you to the not God world where God doesn't exist. So
Okay.
so your position is no longer simply an autobiographical statement whereby you're just saying is, oh, I don't have a positive belief. What you have affirmed that you do believe logically and necessarily commits you to a not God world where God doesn't exist.
Okay, and then like again, how do I know that this isn't just all in your imagination?
I already went through that with you, but I'll be glad to go over it again. That
Okay,
the
thanks.
way to show you that you are guilty of resistant non-belief is that the position that you hold to is absurd on its own grounds. You hold to the not God world. My point to you is this, is that God has revealed himself through everything, and consequently the denial thereof is impossible.
Okay, how can I determine that God revealed himself?
By showing you that your non-acceptance of that is on its own terms irrational and absurd. Okay? I have to show you that your non-belief is resistant non-belief, not non-resistant unbelief. Excuse me, non-resistant unbelief versus resistant non-belief.
Okay, how am I resisting?
Because you are holding to the not God position irrationally. You only have two choices. Either everything in this world is indicative and revelatory of God by his purpose, or not.
Right,
Now,
that's why I'm asking. How do I determine
I'm
that what you're
I'm
believing
sure
is true and not imagination?
because otherwise nothing could mean anything. Everything reveals God by his purpose.
Again, you're just telling me what you believe. How can I determine what you're saying is true?
I just explained it to you. You can
Just
determine what I am saying is true because you recognize that your refusal to accept the rationale is absurd on its own terms.
Because I don't believe you, that means you're right?
No, okay. Is your belief that God does not exist, is it rational?
I believe so. I think they're just made up
Good.
stories.
What is okay, the fact that you believe that they're made up is not a rational justification that God doesn't exist. Do you have a rational justification that what is foundational and fundamental to all temporal states is not God? Do you have a rationale for that?
No. It's just I don't believe it's true.
Okay, so then your belief
I
stands
don't
are
believe my hockey team
listen
is going to
li,
win the Stanley Cup,
listen
but
to me. That's
I
a
can't prove
category
that.
error. Your hockey team is not a worldview, sir. So it's a category error.
You know, I looked that up too about category errors. I couldn't find anything that would tell me you're right.
Yeah.
Category error
Okay.
seems to be in the eye of the
Okay.
beholder, isn't it?
Is a hockey team playing? Is that a worldview?
No.
No. Is God or not God a worldview?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a category error.
Well, thinking my team is going to win. Well,
Okay.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
You're
Yeah,
not. You're
yeah.
not.
No,
You're
yeah.
not. You're
Skip
not.
that.
You're
I'm
not
wrong. Go
getting.
ahead.
Listen. Do you have a rational basis that what is foundational to all temporal states is not a supreme being and creator? Do you have
I
a
don't.
rational basis?
I don't have a rational basis for either option.
Okay, so then you are holding to the proposition that God does not exist without rational grounds then.
I think people who say God doesn't exist and people who say God does exist don't have rational grounds. Both
Do
sides.
you no sir, listen to me carefully, okay? So you are admitting that your God denialism is irrational?
No, I'm saying someone who proclaims that they
Sir,
know
listen,
God doesn't
listen.
exist.
You need to focus.
No, you
Okay?
misunderstood me.
I get indignant with people like you because you're not focusing. Okay? Is your not God position, is it rational or irrational?
I believe it's rational, just like my non-belief in
What
leprechauns.
okay, yeah, okay. Well, we have good reasons to believe that leprechauns do not exist. Do you have a good reason to believe God doesn't exist?
Yeah, I think they're just stories like leprechauns.
Okay, you're not understanding. Okay,
That's my reason.
listen to me. Listen to me. The reason why we believe leprechauns do not exist is because were they to exist in actuality, we would have some credible reportings of it. And the same thing with vampires and Santa Claus or unicorns.
Right,
Okay?
but credible is in the eyes of the beholder,
Do
right?
you understand that when you make an appeal to Santa Claus, leprechauns, vampires, or Bigfoot, things like that, you're also making a category error. Okay?
Again, I
Now,
tried to
the
find out
point is,
something that would show that you're right about that. I
okay,
can't.
listen to me.
Category
Listen to
errors
me.
I looked up as like saying the hockey
Listen to
game
me.
tastes
Do you
delicious.
believe do you believe that there is no life on other planets?
No, I don't believe that. I believe there's probably life somewhere.
Okay. So, but you see, do you have rationale that in fact life does exist on other planets? What's the rationale for that belief?
The law of averages, considering how many suns, how many
No,
planets.
no, that's okay. That are you reasoning probabilistically?
I'm not sure what that means.
You said the law of averages. So
Well,
are
yeah,
you
sure.
reasoning? Okay, well,
If
here's
there's
the
if there's
problem.
trillions and
Here,
trillions of
here,
planets,
okay,
well,
here's
why
the
would I
problem.
think only life happens here?
Here's the problem. If you reason probabilistically, you will live or die by that sword. Do you understand before I go on?
Sure.
Now, now,
Yeah, go ahead.
when it comes to biological life, you think that biological life formed non-directedly. So when we look at the components of life, what we find is that we find that life is inseparably based upon DNA. DNA codes for proteins and other regulatory functions. So life, even in single cells, requires a group of complex proteins. If we were to take the least complex proteins that we could put on the table, we could say they have 100 amino acids in their chain, right? The odds of that occurring by chance over unimaginable number of trials, trillions upon trillions of Earth-like planets. The odds of one protein or the coding sequences for one protein forming would be at a conservative minimum 10 to the power of 100 zeros, because each coding sequence for an amino acid within the chain of 100 amino acids for a rudimentary protein would be 10 to the power of 100 zeros. Okay? Do you understand that so far?
Yes, that's very unlikely.
Now, if we were to factor in a trillion squared Earth-like planets, remember, you were the one who invoked trillion, right? Now, if we were to have a trillion squared Earth-like planets, I believe the figure, and I'm willing to be corrected, would be 10 followed by 24 zeros. Okay, is that a big number?
Sure.
Okay. Now, suppose we double the number of zeros, okay? Not double the number of trials, but double the number of zeros simply to factor in 13.7 billion years multiplied by a
Oops. Hi, am I still here?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It seemed like everything went silent.
Okay, I thought it was me.
No, I think it was everybody. It looked like everybody was on mute, so I don't know.
I think it looks like Darth disappeared.
Same time last time I asked him about this. Does
Is
anybody
it,
else want to take it up? Why? How can
What was
I
the question?
determine that? Well, it was from a discussion Darth was having a few weeks ago with someone and an atheist, and he was asking this atheist, "Is this something that's real or just a figment of your imagination? And they went through the steps of how to determine something is real versus imagination. So I asked Darth, how can I determine that your beliefs are true and not just a figment of your imagination? And he started to answer and then had to leave back then too.
He's back.
Oh, there
I
we
think
go.
he's back. Are you there, Darth?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I dropped out. Yeah, when you appeal to probability as the grounds of life starting, you fail. You can't appeal to probability. It doesn't work. Probability
What?
is against your position.
Do you believe that there is no life on any other planets?
No, I don't believe there's life on other planets. Now, there could be if God made it, but I don't believe it. Now, the point is simply this. The point is simply this, right? You haven't provided us with a rational basis that God does not exist. Saying that you believe that humans made it up, it doesn't follow from that God doesn't exist. Kai Nielsen is a top atheist philosopher. He was selected by the Encyclopedia Britannica to write the atheist entry into that encyclopedia. In one of his books, he stated, all of the reasons for God may fail, but it still may be the case that God exists. So appealing that gods are made up is a genetic fallacy. It doesn't follow from that if all the reasonings for God's existence were faulty, that God doesn't exist. So do you understand that that rationale that you have put forth is a non sequitur?
Well, no. That's why I believe it.
I just offered you a formal rebuttal. Do you know what a non sequitur is?
Something not related to what was being said?
No, a non sequitur means it doesn't follow.
Okay, yeah.
Even if you're correct, if every human being who's ever lived used faulty reasoning to conclude that God exists, it doesn't follow from that God doesn't exist. That's a non sequitur.
Fair enough. So
okay?
now how can I determine that what you believe is true and not...
I just explained to you that the position that you hold to is utterly irrational, and you're holding to the irrational position because you don't want to accept that this world reveals God.
Oh, I wish it did. That's what you keep getting wrong.
Okay, you're not okay. No, you're
my
not
mother, I
understanding.
buried my mother 2 weeks ago. I hope
Listen,
she's in heaven. Do you believe me?
Hank,
Do you believe me?
Hank, this is your personal life story is not relevant to the issue.
Well, it
What
is
is
to my
relevant
beliefs.
is simply this. Hank, what is relevant is this. Do you hold to your not Godism rationally or irrationally?
I believe it's rational.
What is the rational basis for your not Godism?
All of the stories are just made up ways to keep ourselves happy and controlled.
That's already been debunked.
How so? You just keep saying that it's not true, but how can I determine that you're right? You keep telling me you're right, but how can I determine you're right?
Hank, instead of being argumentative, why don't you listen? Listen carefully.
I've been listening for weeks.
You're making the genetic fallacy. The fallacy, okay, just because the reasoning to the conclusion is faulty, it doesn't mean that the conclusion is false. It just means that particular
Yes, of course, I agree with that.
Good.
God
Okay,
can exist, and I hope he does.
Listen carefully. My patience is running out because I think
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, would you not overtalk me? No. You can no longer appeal that God does not exist because people use faulty reasoning in order to believe in God. Do you understand you can't do that anymore?
Well, then what reason would I have to believe in God?
Do you understand you can no longer make an appeal that God does not exist by virtue that people have faulty reasoning for God? Do you understand you can't appeal to that?
But if I can't use this reasoning that they've used to get there, how can I?
Hank, listen to me. You're a grown man. I'm going to ask the question again. If you evade the fair question, I will kick you from the stage.
Okay, God can exist even though people believe it's not true.
Hank, would you stop being argumentative? Now,
Sorry, I was just trying to shorten it.
I'm going to ask the question again. It's a reasonable question. If you purposely evade the question, I will remove you from the stage. Now, do you realize you can no longer appeal to people's faulty reasoning for believing in God, therefore God does not exist? You can't appeal to that. Do you
Okay.
understand that?
Okay.
Now, do you have rational grounds that God does not exist?
I guess not then, according to you.
No. Do you have rational grounds that God does not exist?
I believe so, but you just say, like you do to
What is the,
everybody,
okay, Hank, what is the rational basis that God does not indeed exist?
the same rational basis that I have for why Bigfoot doesn't exist, why Allah doesn't exist, why
No,
Vishnu
excuse
doesn't
me. No,
exist.
okay, that is not an answer. That is an atheist cliche. We have good reasons to believe that Bigfoot does not exist, okay?
Which
Why do
is,
you believe? Listen to me.
what are
Because
those reasons?
If Bigfoot did exist, there would be more than one of them, and there would be at least some credible sightings. And in the absence of credible sightings, we
Who?
can conclude, listen to me carefully. This isn't the first time I've heard this silly atheist cliche. Okay? Now, we have good reasons to believe Bigfoot does not exist. Do you agree with that statement?
I do, many don't.
Okay. Now, do you have a good reason to believe that God does not exist?
Same reason.
No. That's a cliche. Okay? When I say Bigfoot doesn't exist, because what we would expect to find is that there would be more than one of them and there should be some credible sightings. What you're saying is, if God did exist, there would be credible sightings of God. Is that your position?
Well, credible according to who?
Hank, listen to me.
You understand there are
I'm
people who
I'm
believe
I'm
Bigfoot
beginning
sightings are real, right?
I'm
They believe it's
beginning
credible.
I'm beginning to suspect that you are purposely dishonest
Yeah.
and evasive when I speak to you. Now, do you have a good reason that God does not exist other than appealing to leprechauns, vampires, or Bigfoot?
Other than that, no.
So you don't, but you see, appealing to Bigfoot is not a reason that God doesn't exist. All you're simply doing is you're making an analogy. We do not believe Bigfoot exists because we have good reasons to believe he doesn't exist. We have good reasons to believe that Santa Claus is not real. We have good reasons to believe that vampires
Perfect.
and leprechauns.
That's what
Now,
I'm asking. What are the
do
good reasons for
do
me to
you
believe what you believe is
do
true and not
you
imaginary?
have do you have a good reason that God does not exist?
I've given you my reason. Now, can the
Okay, have
original
a nice
question I
day.
asked you?
Have a nice day.
You
You're done. Okay.
Um,
The, yeah. 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 This
Cliche.
guy is purposely obtuse. This
Yeah,
is the
Darth.
little game. This is the game that they play. I've already explained to him that everything reveals God, because otherwise nothing could mean anything. And no, this is not an appeal to ignorance. What we're saying is, in the God world, the actuality and intelligibility of facts is in virtue that they originate from God and God purposes that they reveal him. The only alternative is to say that the putative facts in question do not indeed reveal God. And to show you that they do reveal God is to show you that the denial thereof is utterly irrational.
Yeah, Darth, and we could say, how do you know? Like, if he's gonna say, oh, like, how do you know? And he's just trying to be a relatively, like, it's like relativist, and no one knows. No, but then he says he might say,
So in order for anybody to rationally invoke that God is, given the nature of God as the metaphysical primary, God himself would have to take the initiative to reveal himself either through direct or indirect means, which is the biblical position. What we're saying is that everything indicates God. For example, Hank believes in a number of states of affairs that he cannot see, that the affairs themselves would be meaningless or unintelligible were they not indicative of an unseen realm. Okay?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can